The scent of ozone and fresh rain flooded the combat simulation bay, a cloying, electric sweetness that signaled a catastrophic failure. It clung to the recycled air, a desperate pheromonal scream from an Omega in distress. Captain Jack's rider had Liam cross-pinned against the main console, his body a rigid barrier of controlled fury. A low growl rumbled in Jax's chest as his fangs grazed the sensitive skin of Liam's neck. The scent was driving him mad. The sharp tang of ozone, so clean and alluring, was now a storm erupting from Liam, the man who had been his rival for 3 years, the man he thought was an alpha. Liam's legs trembled, threatening to give out. The air thickened, charged with Jax's own response. A dominant, intoxicating scent of burning cedarwood and aged whiskey that smothered everything else. It was a raw display of power, a primal instinct overwhelming military discipline. The pressure of Jax's fingers on Liam's nape was scorching, pinning him in place. Without, a sharp, alien sting pierced his skin. A muffled cry was torn from Liam's throat as the world tilted, his strength draining away as if pulled from his very bones. He could only sag against Jax's unyielding frame, supported by the very man causing his agony. Jax's breath was a hot, ragged current against his neck. A low, guttural vibration came from his throat, a demand for submission, a promise that the torment would end if Liam would only beg for the mark. The threat hung in the air, a dark promise that sent a fresh wave of tremors through Liam's body. He bit down hard on his lip, the coppery taste of blood a faint anchor in the overwhelming sensory assault. To yield to this man, this brute who had bested him in every drill and spar, who had mocked his supposed lack of a potent alpha scent, was a humiliation beyond measure. Yet, every cell in his body screamed for it, a shameful, instinctual craving for the powerful alpha's claim. Jax's patience, already worn thin, finally snapped. The arm around Liam's waist tightened like a vice, squeezing the air from his lungs. His other hand, calloused and radiating heat, moved to cradle Liam's jaw, tilting his head to expose the vulnerable line of his throat even more completely. His tongue darted out, a wet, scorching trail across the fresh bite mark, tasting the blood and the rain-scented pheromones. Liam arched back with a choked sob, an involuntary spasm of both pain and a shocking, traitorous pleasure. The movement only pressed him deeper into Jax's embrace, sealing his fate. It was over. The thought was a whisper of despair in his mind. Just as Jax's teeth prepared to sink deeper, to forge a bond that would shatter the last of Liam's control, the hiss of the bay door sliding open broke the spell. The sudden intrusion was a physical shock. A voice, breathless and laced with a strange excitement, cut through the tension. It was Medic Cole Evans, announcing that he had the suppressants. The wild storm of alpha pheromones in the room momentarily faltered. Jax froze, his entire body going rigid. He spun around, using his broad back to completely shield Liam from view, blocking the harsh corridor light and Cole's suddenly stunned and complicated gaze. The air, once thick with ozone, was violently scoured clean by a new wave of Jax's scent, now laced with pure, murderous rage. It was the scent of a predator guarding its kill. Cole stood framed in the doorway, the manufactured concern on his face dissolving as he met Jax's eyes. The captain's head was slightly tilted, his gaze a physical force that pinned the medic in place. His lips, thin and pale, parted to utter a single chilling word. He told him to get out. The command, though spoken in a voice ragged from his earlier arousal, echoed with absolute authority. Cole's face drained of all color, his hand holding the hypospray frozen in midair. He stammered, trying to explain that Liam was an Omega who was losing control and needed medical intervention. his eyes darting past Jax's shoulder, trying to catch a glimpse of Liam. A hint of venom seeped into his tone as he insisted that the captain couldn't. Jax cut him off without a word. The sheer force of his phenomenal projection slammed into Cole, a physical blow that sent the medic stumbling backward. Cole's back hit the metal doorframe with a dull thud. The hypospray clattered to the floor. The scent of ozone was now completely gone, annihilated and replaced by the suffocating, possessive weight of burning cedar. Jax repeated his command with glacial finality, ordering him to leave and close the door. Cole's body shook, his last shred of composure shattering. He cast one last look, a venomous, resentful glance that flickered between Jax's immovable back and the unseen figure behind him, before scrambling out of the bay. The door slid shut, plunging the room back into a tense silence. The scent of Jax's rage and possession still hung thick in the air, a promise of violence that made Liam's skin prickle. He held his breath, terrified that any movement would trigger the beast that stood before him. Then Jax moved, crossing the space in a single stride. He seized Liam's chin, his grip bruising, and forced his head up. His voice was a low snarl, accusing him of his deception, of pretending for so long. The humiliation was a fire in Liam's cheeks. He tried to deny it, his voice a pathetic squeak, but Jax merely scoffed. His thumb stroked over Liam's swollen lip, then pushed past his teeth with invasive confidence. He remarked on how convincing the act was, suppressing his true nature, but noted that beneath the tough exterior, he was soft to the core. Shame and anger exploded within Liam. He struggled, pushing against Jax's chest, calling him a lunatic, a monster. His renewed distress caused his own pheromones to flare again, the sweet scent of rain crashing against the smoky wall of cedarwood. A ragged sound escaped Jax's throat. In one fluid motion, he lifted Liam off his feet and deposited him onto the center of the console, trapping him. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a dangerously intimate whisper, and promised to make him even softer. His lips descended on Liam's neck again, no longer tentative. It was a brutal, claiming act of dominance. Broken pleas for him to stop spilled from Liam's lips, a tearful, pathetic sound that betrayed his body's surrender. He was melting under the assault, his hands, meant to push Jax away, clinging weakly to his shoulders. Jax pulled back, his eyes dark pits of desire. He demanded to know what Liam was begging for. The question was a cruel taunt. Shamed into silence, Liam averted his gaze, the word catching in his throat. He felt the tremor of humiliation as he whispered his plea for Jax to mark him. Before the last syllable had faded, Jax's mouth was on his again. But this time, outside the bay, Cole pressed his ear against the cold metal door. He could hear the muffled sounds from within, the faint, heartbreaking whimpers and Jax's low, satisfied responses. Each sound was a spike driven into his heart. His gaze fell to the discarded hypospray, and a cold, calculating resolve hardened his features. In the days following the incident, a strange truce settled between Jax and Liam. The captain, however, had taken it upon himself to conduct daily inspections of the temporary mark. He would corner Liam in deserted corners of the ship, the infirmary, the training deck, once on the darkened observation bridge, his touch both clinical and possessively intimate. Jax would murmur that the mark was healing well, a low rumble of satisfaction in his voice. Liam's protests to be left alone were always met with a dangerous glint in Jax's eye and a flare of his pheromones. He reminded Liam of the near disaster in the simulation bay, asserting that an Omega who couldn't control his scent had no right to refuse his captain's oversight. Jax would then lean in, inhaling deeply at Liam's neck as if reaffirming his ownership, before declaring the mark stable for now. He would often comment on Liam's sensitive constitution, his fingers lingering on the mark, making Liam's face burn with a mixture of anger and a deeply unsettling warmth. Liam's attempts to fight back were useless. Jax would effortlessly pin him, his larger frame a cage of muscle and heat. He started using Liam's name, a sharp command that cut through his defiance, him that any further struggle would result in a much more thorough marking. Cole Evans was a constant, smiling presence. He would approach Liam to inquire about his scheduled pheromone stabilization, his professional demeanor a perfect mask for the coldness in his eyes. He would look from Liam's flushed neck to Jax's stoic face and comment on how their improved relationship was surely a blessing for the crew's morale. The medic insisted on providing Liam with specially formulated nutrient drinks and stronger suppressants, citing concerns over his unusual sensitivity. The drinks had a strange, faintly metallic tang and left Liam feeling sluggish and agitated. He mentioned it to Jax, who, after a cursory check of the formula reports, found nothing amiss but gruffly advised him to be wary of anything Cole offered. The fragile peace was shattered by a sudden skirmish in a border nebula. The blare of red alert klaxons echoed through the Intrepid. As Jax strode across the bridge to lead the strike teams, he passed Liam without a glance, issuing a cold order for him to remain and coordinate defenses. The moment Jax was gone, Cole appeared at Liam's side, offering a nutrient drink for the long watch ahead. He insisted it was a new formula with calming agents. The familiar, unpleasant scent made Liam hesitate, but Cole pressed, citing the security of the entire vessel as dependent on Liam's stability. Under the weight of his duty and Cole's unyielding gaze, Liam drank. A wave of vertigo hit him instantly. His limbs went numb, and a searing heat erupted from the glands on his neck. Cole's voice, feigning alarm, was the last thing he heard clearly. The medic whispered that his pheromones were going wild, but not to worry, he was being taken somewhere safe. His world blurred as he was dragged from the bridge. He vaguely registered Cole speaking into his comms unit, confirming that the target area, Maintenance Bay Delta 7, had been cleared of personnel as planned. Delta 7 was near the lower engineering decks, a place perpetually swarming with off-duty alpha mechanics. A cold dread pierced through Liam's drugged haze. He was thrown unceremoniously into darkness. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, oil, and uninhibited alphas. A rough voice cut through the haze, questioning the sweet smell. Another shouted that it was an omega. The scent of ozone and rain, supercharged by Cole's drug, exploded from Liam, a beacon in the dark. It was no longer alluring. It was a desperate, panicked siren song that drove the alphas in the room into a frenzy. The bay erupted. Rough, greasy hands grabbed at him, tearing at his uniform. He was pulled and shoved between hulking bodies, their rank, metallic scents overwhelming him. The glands on his neck burned as if they would burst. He screamed for them to get away, but his voice was lost in the chorus of bestial snarls. Just as his last shred of hope vanished, the bay doors were torn from their moorings with a deafening screech of metal. Every alpha froze, their heads snapping toward the breach. Jax Ryder stood there, silhouetted against the corridor lights, his face a mask of apocalyptic rage. He moved through the crowd of stunned men, who parted before him like water, their primal instincts screaming at them to submit to the apex predator. He reached the corner where Liam lay, tattered and trembling. Without a word, he lifted Liam into his arms. The familiar, grounding scent of burning cedar and whiskey enveloped him, a shield against the chaos. A weak, involuntary whimper escaped Liam as the drug in his system reacted to Jax's proximity, and he instinctively burrowed deeper into the captain's chest. Jax carried him to his personal quarters and gently laid him on the bed. He stood over him for a moment, unfastening the top buttons of his uniform with sharp, angry movements. Then he leaned down, his fingers pressing against the inflamed glands on Liam's neck. Liam flinched, and Jax hissed that he deserved it, though the pressure of his touch immediately softened. His powerful alpha pheromones flowed from his fingertips, a calming balm that soothed the drug-induced firestorm in Liam's veins. A small, tearful sigh of relief escaped Liam's lips as his body arched unconsciously toward the source of comfort. Jax froze, his throat working. He stated flatly that the temporary mark was failing, that Cole's supplements had wrecked his system. At the mention of Cole, Liam's mind cleared enough for a surge of fury. He tried to explain that it was him, that Cole had thrown him in there, but Jax cut him off. He explained coldly that the security logs were wiped for maintenance, and the access records were filed under an engineering cruise authority. The alphas involved were all claiming Liam had wandered in by accident, his scent provoking them. Jax's face was grim as he leaned closer, telling Liam that without proof, even he couldn't touch the medic. He told Liam to stay away from Cole, threatening to lock him in these quarters if he ever took anything from the medic again. In the weeks that followed, as the fleet underwent post-battle assessments, Jax's inspections became a nightly ritual. He would frown, complaining about the slow recovery, and infuse Liam's system with more of his stabilizing pheromones. Liam's verbal protests grew weaker each time, his body betraying him with sighs of contentment. One afternoon, Liam went to deliver damage reports to Jax's office. He found the door ajar and heard a voice inside. It was Cole, his tone twisted with triumphant glee. He had found it. The encrypted key to Jax's private logs and the backup of Liam's original medical files. Liam listened in horror as Cole detailed his plan to fabricate evidence of treason, to frame Liam for leaking fleet secrets. Imagining with relish the look on Jax's face when he discovered the betrayal of the person he was protecting. Just as Liam was about to burst in, a hand clamped over his mouth from behind, pulling him into an adjacent room. It was Jax. He had heard everything. He revealed that he had been monitoring Cole ever since the engineering bay incident. The evidence Cole had just finished creating was already in Jax's possession. He had been waiting for the medic to overplay his hand. 2 days later, a piece of falsified intelligence was allowed to leak through a channel that implicated Liam. At the emergency command meeting, Jax projected Cole's fabricated proof onto the main screen. He turned his cold, accusatory gaze on Liam, demanding an explanation. Though he knew it was an act, the weight of the command crew's suspicion and Jax's feigned disappointment felt suffocatingly real. Cole, sitting among the senior staff, could barely contain his malicious glee. Liam played his part, vehemently denying the charges. The room descended into chaos, with officers shouting for his immediate arrest. Just as Cole's victory seemed assured, Jax raised a hand for silence. His gaze shifted, landing on the medic with the weight of a death sentence. In a voice that cut through the room, he accused Cole Evans of fabricating intelligence and framing a fellow officer. The main screen flickered, now displaying a recording from Jax's office. Cole's gloating monologue, followed by an unbreakable chain of data showing his every keystroke, his procurement of the destabilizing drug, and his manipulation of the access logs for Delta 7. Cole collapsed in his chair, utterly broken. Jax ordered the guards to take him to the brig to await a court-martial. The room was silent. Jax then turned to Liam, extending his hand. Liam walked to him, placing his hand in Jax's. The captain pulled him close, wrapping an arm around his waist, blanketing him in his dominant scent. He announced to the entire command staff that Liam was his, and his loyalty was guaranteed. He dared anyone else to ever touch him. Later, alone in the vast meeting room, Liam tried to pull his hand away, muttering that Jax had deceived him too. Jax held him fast, explaining it was the only way to make the snake show his fangs. He cupped Liam's neck, his thumb caressing the sensitive glands. He admitted that seeing Liam looking so helpless and falsely accused had been affecting. He then spoke with a raw seriousness that stole the air from Liam's lungs, telling him the charade was over. He was to be himself, to be his Omega. The blunt declaration shattered Liam's remaining defenses. He buried his burning face in Jax's chest, a choked sound escaping him. Jax tilted his chin up, his lips meeting Liam's in a kiss that was both a conquest and a surrender. When they finally broke apart, Liam was breathless, clinging to him for support. Jax's voice was a hoarse whisper against his skin. The mark was almost gone. This time there would be no escape. He swept Liam into his arms and carried him back to his quarters. Laying him on the bed, he loomed over him, his eyes burning with an intensity that promised utter possession. His voice was a low, seductive command, echoing their first encounter but stripped of all its cruelty. He told Liam to ask for it, to beg him for a permanent mark. Liam closed his eyes, a tremor running through him. He reached up, his hands circling Jax's neck, and tilted his own head back in a gesture of complete surrender. In a voice barely louder than a breath, clear and shaking with courage, he made his request. He asked Jax Ryder to permanently mark him. A guttural sound of approval rumbled in Jax's chest. The last word he heard was, "Good," before sharp teeth pierced his skin, and the sense of burning cedar and fresh rain finally, irrevocably, became one.